Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to talk about another very important neonatal topic, which is generally called birth asphyxia. We also call it perinatal asphyxia, and it's also known by its pathological name hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to see what hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy is, what are the risk factors that can lead to HIE in newborns, and how does it actually cause neurological injury and injury to other organ systems, how to go about diagnosis of hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, what are the different complications linked with HIE, maybe the neurological complications and otherwise. We're going to have an overview of the management of HIE and what would be the outcome of neonates suffering from perinatal asphyxia or HIE. So as the name suggests, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, it's two important components here, hypoxia and ischemia. And as we very well understand from our knowledge of pathology, hypoxia is actually decreased arterial oxygen concentration. And ischemia means that there is decreased blood flow to the cells, and remember that blood is the one which takes oxygen and the important nutrients to the cells to maintain their normal function. So if there is decreased blood flow, there would be insufficient supply of metabolites to maintain the normal function of the cells. So this combination of hypoxia and ischemia, when leads to brain dysfunction, this is what we call hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy in the context of neonatal care. Remember, this is one of the most important cause of permanent damage to CNS tissues, and if the damage is severe enough, this may lead to neonatal death really early on, or cerebral palsy in the long term, or even developmental delay of varying degrees of severity. So 1/4 of all neonatal deaths attributed to prematurity that we learned the previous time. Another 20 to 30% of neonatal deaths are attributed to birth asphyxia, either directly or indirectly. And this incidence increases quite a fold in premature babies. Not only that, but in 1/3 to half of those who do survive the initial insult of hypoxia and ischemia, they go on to develop long-term neurological or neurodevelopmental disabilities. You can clearly see that the incidence of birth asphyxia in Pakistan is at least 3 times higher than that in the developed countries. And this is one of the major reasons of contribution of high infant mortality rate in Pakistani setup. Various factors that can lead to birth asphyxia. Any insult that leads to decreased blood flow or oxygen delivery is decreased to the fetal or neonatal brain would lead to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. These can be causes pertaining to the fetal or antenatal reasons, or the perinatal reasons, or the postnatal reasons. But remember that vast majority, in some studies up to 70% of these causes are the perinatal reasons, which are very, very important. These perinatal reasons are the ones which can be dealt with if one is aware of this, what is happening around the time of the birth, and if one goes on to do good resuscitation. So the antenatal causes, inadequate oxygen supply through the maternal blood. It could be because of sheer hypoventilation secondary to anesthesia, or mother being suffering from cyanotic heart disease, or having respiratory failure because of various reasons, including carbon monoxide poisoning. Or if the maternal blood pressure is low, of course that would lead to decreased blood flow through the placenta to the fetus, and this can be because of acute blood loss or spinal anesthesia or compression of the vena cava and aorta to the gravid uterus. Uterine tetany, inability of the uterus to relax, hence impeding the blood supply to the fetus. Problem with the blood supply if there are issues in the umbilical cord compression or knotting of the cord. Issues with the placenta abruptio placenta or placental insufficiency because of toxemia, and post-maturity can also lead to birth asphyxia. Causes of birth asphyxia after the newborn has been born can be either because of failure of oxygenation or because of severe anemia or severe shock. As far as failure of oxygenation is concerned, severe forms of cyanotic congenital heart disease in the newborn or severe pulmonary disease can lead to failure of oxygenation even if everything antenatally and perinatally went all right. Severe anemia, again because of severe hemorrhage or hemolytic disease where there is not enough hemoglobin to carry the oxygen and there is not enough blood to carry on with the supply to the vital organs, lead to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Same would occur with severe shock where the blood supply to the organ is not met, overwhelming sepsis, massive blood loss, intracranial hemorrhage, or even the adrenal hemorrhage. So if we look at the risk factors which can lead to birth asphyxia, there are maternal risk factors, then there are placental risk factors, and there are fetal risk factors. If we look at the maternal risk factors, we all understand that eclampsia, preeclampsia, hypertension, they can all compromise the blood flow through the placenta to the fetus, leading to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. And these are the cases which sometimes may necessitate urgent intervention. Pelvic abnormality, cephalopelvic disproportionate, so common in our setup because of the maternal malnutrition, which lead to compromise of fetal circulation and can lead to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Maternal diabetes mellitus, nephritis, low blood pressure of the mother, again there would be decreased blood supply and it leading to ischemia and the birth asphyxia to the baby. Infections, we have talked about uterine tetany and we have talked about maternal hypoxemia, can lead to cardiac and pulmonary diseases. Of course, if the placenta is low-lying or if there is placental abruptio or if there is placental insufficiency because of so many other reasons that can lead to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy because of compromise in the fetal circulation. The fetal risk factors, we talked about cord prolapse or cord compression. Very common reason is cord around the neck, especially what we call the double cord around the neck, which actually leads to decreased blood supply to the fetal brain, and that can lead to antenatal hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which sometimes may go unrecognized, but if it is recognized, immediate intervention is warranted. Abnormal lie or abnormal presentation, post-maturity in itself sometimes can lead to obstructive labor or CPD and can cause hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, as would be anemia that we have talked about, congenital infections, cerebral abnormalities, not only the cerebral abnormalities, but I would like to mention neuromuscular abnormalities. Even if the antenatal history remained alright, maternal risk factors were not there, there were no event around the time of the birth, but if baby has got significant cerebral abnormalities and for that matter neuromuscular abnormalities, baby may not be able to breathe right after the birth, and this may lead to hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, primarily hypoxemic or hypoxic or anoxic encephalopathy, but of course that would lead to myocardial depression and ischemia as well. One of the very important reasons of neonatal causes of hypoxia that we need to understand and realize. Of course, if the fetus is suffering from significant congenital cardiac or pulmonary defects can lead to hypoxia. So how does hypoxia, ischemia or hypoxia and ischemia lead to the encephalopathy? Because of lack of oxygen supply, there is cascade of events that takes place. Anaerobic glycolysis sets in, leads to decreased production of ATPs, increased production of lactate. This in turn lead to what we call primary cerebral energy failure. And this primary cerebral energy failure leads to one, the metabolic derangements, the metabolic acidosis because of lactic acidosis and hypoglycemia, and they can also lead to alteration in the cerebral blood flow because of loss of autoregulation to the cerebrum as far as blood flow is concerned. Now, once there is primary cerebral energy failure, either the brain would suffer from immediate insult leading to immediate neuronal death and the brain injury, and depending upon the severity of the insult, this immediate brain injury may even lead to the death of the newborn. If, however, the injury is not severe enough and because of its own mechanism or because of the intervention, hypoxia and ischemia resolves, there is normalization of cerebral metabolism. Even in that situation, either there would not be any brain injury and the baby would be all right, or baby's brain may suffer from what we call secondary brain insult, which leads to secondary energy failure. This is very important for us to realize. The initial insult in certain circumstances may not be under our control, so the immediate neuronal deaths may not be averted. However, secondary brain insult is something which is or which may be under our control if we intervene appropriately at appropriate time, because if we don't do that, again this secondary brain insult and secondary energy failure will lead to brain injury. Now, this failure of energy dependent ionic pumps leads to influx of sodium, chloride and calcium, and there would be leak of potassium from the cells. There would be membrane depolarization. The NMDA receptor activation would increase, and this would lead to increased neuronal damage. The metabolic arrangements that shortly follows include high glycolysis and increased lactate levels, low phosphate and metabolic acidosis, hypoglycemia. There is either increased or decreased cerebral blood flow, and this is because of loss of autoregulation of blood flow to the brain that occurs because of the cascade of inflammatory events that take place because of hypoxia and ischemia. Moreover, this loss of autoregulation may also lead to reduction in cardiac output, and this might be either because of loss of autoregulation or because of myocardial insufficiency. This all leads to hypotension, and this hypotension, as a matter of fact, may lead to involvement of other organs in addition to the brain. Involvement of lungs leading to shock lungs, involvement of kidneys leading to acute kidney failure, involvement of liver leading to liver failure, so on and so forth. So once these changes occur, there is increased capillary permeability that leads to cerebral edema. The severity of hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy depends upon the severity of the primary insult, and also would depend upon the initial resuscitation measures and the post-resuscitation care. So if initial resuscitation was not good enough, that may lead to the increase in the primary injury to the brain, and if the post-resuscitation care is not good enough, there might be more chances of secondary brain insult, and this secondary brain insult can lead to involvement of other organ systems as well. So in a full-term infant, this would result in cortical necrosis of the brain. There would be ischemic injury to the perisagittal areas of the brain, leading to infarcts, and this may in turn lead to focal seizures and hemiplegia in the long term. In preterms, there would be periventricular leukomalacia, and there might be involvement of the basal ganglia, and again we know that preterms are more likely to develop intraventricular hemorrhages as well. So how do you detect any baby to be suffering from birth asphyxia or perinatal asphyxia? There would be certain indicators that would be present before the time of the birth. So it is very important to identify the potential risk factors for birth asphyxia, and if these risk factors are present, one, we need to try avert the chances of birth asphyxia by the corrective measures, for example taking care of the maternal hypertension or diabetes for that matter, or early intervention, for example in case of double cord around the neck or fetal distress. So identification of risk factor is of paramount importance. Then there would be signs of fetal distress, and these signs can range from fetal bradycardia to the changes in CTG like late decelerations. Ultrasound would be helpful in detecting the decreased fetal movements or thick meconium, which again would be a risk factor for the development of birth asphyxia in the newborns. Lately, the importance of Doppler has been there. The end diastolic flow is very, very important. If end diastolic flow is decreased, that would be a risk factor not only for IUGR but also for birth asphyxia. But if end diastolic flow is reversed, it's a big risk factor, and these babies need to be delivered on urgent basis. At the time of the birth, there are certain physical parameters by which we can see if the baby is alright or if there are any features to suggest perinatal asphyxia. And the one very important score that we use so often is the APGAR score. The A stands for appearance, P for pulse, G for Grimace, A for activity, and R for the respiratory rate. Now, APGAR score is not very reliable in premature babies and those who are very, very small, but it is pretty reliable in full-term babies and those who weigh appropriately. So, the APGAR score at 1 minute suggests the need for resuscitation. So, in the first 1 minute, one would be doing the normal newborn care, the drying, the stimulation, the positioning of the head, etc., etc. And at 1 minute, one would take the score, the APGAR score, and if the APGAR score is less, that would suggest that there is a need for further resuscitation. And an APGAR score at 5 minutes would suggest that the baby is likely to develop hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, and APGARs at 15 to 20 minutes actually are more correlated with the long-term sequelae secondary to birth asphyxia. Now this is what APGAR score is: the appearance, pulse, Grimace, activity, and respiration, and we take the scores as 0, 1, and 2 depending upon what the appearance is. If it is blue all over, 0 score. If it is extremities are blue, score 1, and if the baby is pink all over, it is given score 2. Similarly, if there is no pulse, 0 score. If the heart rate is less than 100, 1 score. If it is more than 100, it's 2 score. If there are no response whatsoever, Grimace, the score is 0. If there is weak Grimace when the baby is stimulated, so score is 1. If the baby cries and pulls away when stimulated, score given is 2. If there is no activity, baby is flaccid, the score given is 0. If there is some flexion of the arm, score is 1. And if the arms are having good flexion and legs they resist extension, the score given is 2. Similarly, if there is no breathing at all, score is 0. If there is irregular breathing or gasping, which so often occur in newborn babies, the score given is 1. And if there is strong cry and baby is breathing appropriately, the score given is 2. So depending upon the total score, a score of 7 to 10 suggests that the baby is normal and no further resuscitation or observation might be needed. But if the score is 5 to 6, it is a mild birth asphyxia and the baby might need little more observation. If the score is 3 to 4, it suggests a moderate birth asphyxia and baby need to be taken to the neonatal care unit and need to be given initial management. If score of 0 to 2 is severe birth asphyxia, immediate resuscitation measures, maybe intubation and other things might be needed for these babies. Now, the other thing that one need to understand is that based on certain clinical parameters apparent in the newborn baby, the sensorium of the baby, the activity of the baby, neuromuscular control, the primitive reflexes, the sucking, moro, and the tonic neck reflex, involvement of the autonomic system as evident from the size of the pupils, response of the pupils, the heart rate, and the seizures, one can stage the birth asphyxia in stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So a child who is deeply comatose would fall in stage 3. Similarly, if there are no activity, stage 3. so on and so forth. So the initial stage 1 can be reversed with appropriate management, but if no appropriate management is undertaken, the baby may go on to develop stage 2 or stage 3, and of course the prognosis would vary. Babies with birth asphyxia can have a host of complications, not only involving the brain leading to encephalopathy, but acute complication involving the kidneys, acute tubular necrosis, respiratory distress syndrome, meconium aspiration, pulmonary hypertension, so important and so difficult to treat in babies with birth asphyxia. They may go on to develop apneas and pulmonary hemorrhages, myocardial dysfunction we have talked about. We have talked about the involvement of gut in the form of necrotizing enterocolitis or gut ulcerations. Their hematology may be involved. They may suffer from disseminated intravascular coagulation or hemorrhagic disease of the newborn. We have talked about the metabolic involvement, hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and syndrome of inappropriate ADH excretion. The liver might be involved with the raised liver function test and the amylase. As far as management is concerned, the prevention is better than cure, as we always say. So it is the prevention that is needed. And once the baby is born, the other most important thing is the neonatal resuscitation. The appropriate neonatal resuscitation at the time of birth is going to avert 70-80% causes of perinatal birth asphyxia. So these are the two most important things. If the baby is born with whatever degree of severity birth asphyxia, general supportive care would be needed. We have talked about thermoneutral environment when we talked about prematurity. We need to monitor the vital signs and make sure that the input-output record is matched. Need to sometimes place a nasogastric tube. 1 to aspirate the gastric content, and 2 sometimes to give them the feed. We need to see if there is hypoglycemia or not. We need to monitor that and manage that. Blood gases to look for metabolic acidosis. Most of them would need oxygen therapy. Soda bicarb sometimes, not always, would be needed if the metabolic acidosis is very severe. Sometimes we might end up giving them soda bicarb, but that should not be routine for mild to moderate cases of birth asphyxia. We need to maintain the fluid and electrolyte balance. Antibiotics would not actually be helpful in birth asphyxia as such, but if birth asphyxia is secondary to the neonatal infections or neonatal sepsis, antibiotics would be very important to give. The specific management, neurological involvement in the form seizures, you need to give them anticonvulsants, phenobarbital being the favored one. You may give other anticonvulsants as well to manage and to prevent cerebral edema, fluid restriction, and sometimes we end up giving them the mannitol. Hypotension with the plasma expanders like fluids or inotropic support might be needed. We might sometimes have to give them digoxin. We need to treat hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, and hypomagnesemia. Acute kidney injury needs interventions and management, as does involvement of the gut. If the baby remains in apnea, the baby would need intubation and ventilation, but what we call intermittent positive pressure ventilation. We need to aspirate meconium from the trachea if there is apnea at the time of the birth. Now, the guidelines regarding meconium aspiration, they have changed. Previously, we used to say that any baby born with thick meconium, right at the time of birth, before the baby takes first breath, pass down endotracheal tube and aspirate the trachea. But now the guidelines have changed. Now, if the baby with meconium strain liquor is active and vigorous in breathing appropriately, there is no need to put down an endotracheal tube and do tracheal suctioning and aspirate the meconium from the trachea. Of course, some of them would go on to develop what we call meconium aspiration syndrome with the involvement of the lungs, and they would need respiratory support. Pulmonary hypertension occurs in vast majority of cases of moderate to severe hypoxia, and this is because of pulmonary vasoconstriction, and this pulmonary vasoconstriction leading to pulmonary hypertension can sometimes be very problematic and very difficult to treat. So we treat them with inhaled nitric, oxygen, and vasodilators. Now, the new thing that has occurred over the last few years in the management of birth asphyxia is the role of therapeutic hypothermia. Now, this therapeutic hypothermia actually prevents the secondary insult to the brain that we talked about earlier on. So, remember, primary insult may not be under our control, but this secondary insult, if managed appropriately, can help in decreasing the morbidity and mortality because of the secondary insult to the brain. So what we do is that we bring down the body temperature of the baby to 33.5 degrees Celsius for about 3 days. Now this decrease in baby's body temperature slows down the baby's metabolic rate, and the secondary energy depletion is prevented in this form. This actually would lead to recovery of the brain cells, and this would prevent the secondary insult and the secondary brain damage to the newborn brain. So this therapeutic hypothermia has shown promising results world over, and this is management. This is the management which is considered a treatment of option in moderate to severe cases of birth asphyxia nowadays. Outcome depends upon the severity and the stage of the asphyxia. Of course, where the birth asphyxia is advanced, the stage is more the chances of poorer outcome. Mortality we have talked about 10 to 20%, in certain cases maybe up to 30%. However, those who survive may have, half of them may have neurological sequelae, the long-term neurodevelopmental outcome. So the prognosis in stage 1 is excellent, 100% neurological outcome and recovery. Stage 2, 80% would have normal neurological outcome. However, in stage 3, there would be high mortality. Half of them would die because of the insult, and half of them would go on to develop long-term neurodevelopmental outcome, either as cerebral palsy or mental retardation or microcephaly or epilepsy, or subtle changes like learning disabilities, etc., etc. So if there are any questions about birth asphyxia, what it is, how does it cause the insult and injury, what are the risk factors, how do we diagnose or suspect birth asphyxia, the overview of the management, what would be the outcome, you are more than welcome to ask the questions and post your comments. Thank you very much.